live.
Except it's going to be perfect the first time around and absolutely
And then
terrible
the second time
every
it's going
other
to be
time.
horrible. Yeah.
Every other time.
Well,
so if you're into
let's practice the open.
Let me get all my
and
perfection out.
The interview.
We'll do
That's
that.
another thing. Is Jade just going to say the interview, or are we still going to toss to Jared? He'll say what the interview is.
What's that, Mike?
Yeah, you guys you should toss to me.
Yeah,
Are we still
I was
tossing
going to
to
ask
Jared
about
to
that
explain the
too.
interview?
Oh, yeah, Jared.
Or is Jade just going to say it?
I thought that, yeah, Ben, do you have a preference either way?
What's the question?
Ben, is Jade going to toss to Jared for the interview?
To introduce it? Because I thought that actually flowed really well, at least when I saw it, and it seemed to.
Yeah, we did it
and then we had
last week.
Jared on
give
the
me a second
observation.
to think through this flow. So we've just done citizens.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be disappointed to toss it to me too.
Yeah, actually, yeah. If we don't, then it's awkward. It's disconnected. So
Yeah.
you definitely need to toss. So everyone stay in this room, and you can be like, hey, don't use the term "welcome back." That drives me crazy because they never went
Welcome
anywhere.
back.
But we did.
Right? We're the ones who went somewhere.
Yeah.
They didn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
So why are we welcoming them back?
We went on a magical
Nice to
journey
see
through
you
the
again.
ones and zeros of the internet.
So, but in terms of the initial introductions, like,
Oh, the cold open.
yeah.
So it used to be.
Yes.
Hey, what's up, everybody?
Oh, in the cold open, yes, you're definitely going to toss to Jared in the cold
Yeah,
open.
uh-huh.
So, Space Mike,
Hey,
Christina, and
gamers.
Jared.
Oh, what's up?
And then
Hey, Vsauce here.
when we come back and say, all right, we're going to change gears a little bit. We're going to head out to Jared on the observation lounge to talk to whoever about whatever. Take
Okay.
it away, Jared, and then allow Jared to introduce his guest.
Got
It's
it.
awkward if you introduce it for him.
Got it. So then in the cold open, I'm like, what's up tomorrow?
What's up, people?
Hi!
So aggressive.
And they know.
Hey, what's going on, everybody?
Yeah, I can't do hair.
Oh my
Welcome
God.
to space, the infinite frontier. I'm gonna be your host today, Harry Carey. It's gonna be so great.
Everybody got it.
Jared.
Barbecue sauce.
See you live from Wrigley Field.
I'm going to schedule you as Capcom if you keep that up.
Oh, I will do it. Trust me.
that's great.
Do not tempt me, Ben.
That was great.
You know
Oh my
that I am
gosh.
the internet's monkey. I will do whatever it tells me to do.
So then in the cold open, then like, what's up tomorrow? You know, what's on your mind today? And then she'll blah, and then I throw it.
Well, my car.
I was going to say,
To
oh
be
my God.
honest, existential. And then be like,
That's cool. I'm excited about space stuff.
all right.
Actually,
Love you, Athena, but
that would, interestingly enough, play really well.
And then be like, what about you, Mike? And then you go into it. And then, so another question then, what's going to be the transition between the end of the cold open and the intro? Or is there none? Just as soon as Mike's done.
tomorrow begins.
Oh, that's right. Tomorrow begins.
Begins
And then-
right
and
now.
then roll
That's
me.
the only part of the cold open that we're requiring be done word for word.
Meow.
Right meow.
Meow. We could do like a Super Troopers thing.
Let's try it.
See how
Oh,
many
wait,
times.
Let's try it right now.
No.
Let's try it right now.
What?
Right now.
What did you say?
Just for practice. Get the wiggles
We're already
out.
practicing.
So, and then one more thing. So then in the intro, when I'm saying Athena's name and then I'm introducing launches, at what point do I ever mention Jared on the observation deck?
You don't.
I just don't.
So once we're into the intro, it's just
It's just
you
us.
three, and then we get to Jared on the he gets introduced in segment 2. Right. So that's where he will have his introduction. Be like, one of the person we haven't introduced yet is Jared. He's out on the observation lounge. He's got a something.
Got
That
it.
is into segment 2 itself.
Okay, he's on the observation deck with. I have his article. Yes. Of resolution. Chuck Ryan. Get ready for fun.
Do we want to try it?
Yeah.
Yay.
Mike, ready?
Yep.
What's up tomorrow, Athena? What have you got on your mind today?
Dwarf mergers are feeding stellar formations, and I love stars.
That sounds delicious. And Mike, what about you?
Oh man, NASA is investing in some of my favorite space projects, and it's gonna be awesome.
Oh man, that sounds great. Well, folks, tomorrow starts right now. I forgot something.
Still
Yeah,
toss
who
Jared,
cares
Jared.
about me?
Jared exists. I'm sorry. I knew that's why there was an awkward. But I'm like, wait, I missed something.
Yeah, I'm just gonna go home.
Let's go that back to the beginning and let's skip the covering shots as well. Let's just stay on camera.
Comes out of nowhere. I'm just gonna go
Okay, so
home.
after
going home.
Mike says what he likes, and then I'll just be like, and we've also got Jared on the observation deck. And then do you want me to go any further than that, or?
I'll take over.
You toss it
tosses to him.
Tosses to him, and
In
he
the
says,
cold
"I've got
open.
a blah 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 with blah 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 blah," and then we come back and you say,
Jared's got the ball. He heads
Tomorrow
down to the end zone.
All you
Let's go.
need to say
Alright.
is we got Jared on the
Okay.
observation deck. Yeah.
This is why we do this.
Jade crossing the
And then when
line,
it
passes to
back
Jared.
us,
He
it's
shoots.
like,
He
all right, that sounds
scores.
awesome.
Yes.
Let me out.
Okay. What's up tomorrow? Athena, what have you got on your mind today?
Dwarf mergers feed stellar formation, and I love stars.
Scrumptious. And what about you today, Mike?
Oh man, NASA's investing in some of my favorite space projects. It's gonna be great.
Can't wait to hear about it. And Jared on the observation deck, what do we have over there?
Well, we've got Chuck Ryan here to talk about the space shuttle that you never knew actually existed.
Are we going to talk about the fact that he's invisible? Because I think that's pretty neat. Everybody, tomorrow
wow.
starts right now.
Good morning. How's everything up in the sky?
Oh yeah, for laughing.
So that was good. We're taking the 15 seconds, I think, a little bit to heart, and we're rushing it a little bit.
Oh,
So
okay.
Mike and Athena, you did fine, but Mike and Athena, you can definitely slow it down a bit and have a little bit more, like you can go into a little bit more depth.
Okay.
You don't need to race through it. Again,
Got it.
that hook, that 15 seconds is just the amount of time I have to capture your interest. It doesn't mean I need to be done in 15 seconds. So, I mean, we'll... Because I don't want to make it so fast that everyone's like, "What the hell is going on here?"
Right,
So
yeah.
I would just exactly as we did is okay, but I would just slow it down just a notch.
Okay.
Cool.
Yeah. Shall we try again?
And I'm not gonna try to say right now with you. I'm out of sync. So.
Yeah. Sorry.
That was very funny.
Right now,
Sorry,
right now.
No, right now. No, right now.
Now, then, here.
Watch his TV
Yeah.
when he moves quickly.
Oh, yeah.
Wait, move really fast.
Yeah.
He's Max Headrooming, or Max Headrooming, I suppose.
That's hilarious.
Switching out a little bit.
Oh my god.
So then when we come back for that the warm intro, and then it's like What's
up?
And then the hot intro.
so
Hi there.
I know you don't want welcome to tomorrow, but something more, because I know that's when I introduced them. I'm just trying to think of the least awkward way to be like, once the wow, 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 and they come back, be like, hello again, friends, or not even say hello again, or just like, what's up? Today we have Athena with some.
This is after
Tasty
this.
news.
We should start
Yes.
introducing. You should start by introducing yourself.
Oh, yeah.
Hello, everyone. Hello, citizens.
Hello.
As
Maybe
you
your cap
know,
conference
I'm just
day.
kidding.
Hello, citizens. As you know, my name I won't even tell you.
And if you need to know, just log off right now. Oh, God.
And that's when the name caption pulls up.
Oh my god.
Okay. All right. Hey, everybody. Oh, God. Who does that? All right. Hi, everyone. Hello, everyone. And then it just goes way like, hello, everyone.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show.
It's great. I have a big cup of milk for some reason.
Oh yeah, if you introduce
Everyone's
yourself
suddenly
first.
sitting and lounging with like blankets and a fireplace.
Snuggies.
With snuggies. You're like, hello, everyone. Like, whoops.
Room temperature milk.
Jade, if you introduce yourself first,
Yeah.
and then introduce Athena, and then introduce me last. After my introduction, we can roll right into launch minute.
Okay, cool. So, like we were talking about then, like, today we've got some great news with Athena, but before we launch into that, we are going to dive into some launch minutes.
Before we launch into that, we're going to launch into Mike.
I've never done that before.
That sounds
Children. I'm working with children.
You can't do anything about it.
All right, I feel like we should just start the show and just wait for them to show up.
Awesome.
Is that all right?
It's up to you.
Cool.
Let's do it.
You guys want one more? You know what?
Nah.
I feel comfortable.
I
Feel
don't-
good.
Yeah.
Feel good to me.
All
Yeah.
the funnies are going to leak out, and I won't have any left.
Yeah.
There you go. All right, let's start this.
And actually, my laptop might die. So it was on 100% this morning. I don't know what happened.
Okay. If you guys are going to throw to me, I should probably have a guest, right?
Or we can throw to camera 3.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
just the close-up of Jared.
Yeah, let's do it. Do I have enough hair room?
Somebody check focus on that camera, please.
Here, I'll get it.
Wait, how can you do it? That's hilarious.
Man, I'm snarky today. I'm sorry.
I love it.
You're
It's so
sassy.
good.
I'm just I'm just a bunch of hot tea today.
Hot tea.
Y'all ready for this? I think it's because I stayed up and the Delta IV Heavy disappointed me.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I'm just like, how could you do this?
She disappointed us all.
I did not stay up because I'm not.
Because he knew. Just kidding.
Because you're
Scheduled to scrub.
not at liberty to say. So.
There you go.
What's up tomorrow? Today, Athena, what is on your mind?
We have dwarf mergers that are feeding stellar formation, and I love stars.
Oh, and I love feeding. Oh, and Mike, what about you? What are you excited about today?
Oh man, I'm really excited about NASA investing in some of my favorite space projects, and it's going to be awesome because these things are really going to happen.
Ooh, that makes me so excited. And Jared on the observation deck, what do we have out there?
Well, we've got Chuck Ryan on to talk a little bit about the space shuttle you've never heard of.
That sounds exciting because I haven't heard of it. So today, tomorrow starts right now.
Good morning. How's everything up in the sky?
Greetings, friends of tomorrow. My name is Jade, and I will be your host for today. We have Athena with some really exciting news, but before we launch into that, we are actually going to have us a few launch minutes from Mr. Mike himself. Mike, what do you got for us today?
Oh man. So first off, we have a launch of a Falcon 9 Block 5 rocket, and it was awesome. This launched from Launch Complex 40 in Cape Canaveral, Florida at 05:18 Coordinated Universal Time on Tuesday, August 7th. Its payload was the Mariputa, also known as the Telcom 4 communications satellite, headed to geosynchronous orbit. And this flight was really cool because it was the first flight, or rather the first reflight of a Block 5 Falcon 9. And it just so happened to be the very first Block 5 Falcon 9 that was launched back in May 11th, which flew the Bangabandhu 1 satellite. And this was just beautiful footage. I really love the color correction on this one. And it happened to be the 15th space launch for the year. And something else that was really cool about this is they were able to land successfully on the drone ship, the Of Course I Still Love You drone ship in the Pacific Ocean. And it was the 28th successful booster landing for SpaceX. And of course they delivered the satellite successfully.
Yes, that's always important, of course. And you know what? You're right. You know, it just, even though we've already, you know, kind of done the whole launch it and land it back down on Of Course I Love You, it never gets old. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, by the way, amazing job. I know these launch minutes are relatively new, but you know what, Mike? You're killing it. But we did kind of cheat a little bit. We were a little lucky. And why is that? I think there was initially supposed to be 2 launches you were going to cover today. Isn't that correct?
There was a scrub late last night of the Delta IV Heavy, which is carrying the Parker Solar Probe to a solar orbit, and hopefully that will be launching within 24 hours. So late tonight or early tomorrow morning, depending on where you are in the world. Otherwise, if that 24-hour turnaround doesn't work, then hopefully we'll have a new launch date target for that very soon. But something I did want to say about this particular launch is I have to say that Lauren Lyons is my favorite host of the SpaceX webcasts, and I was so happy to see her get to host this one itself. And just the footage on this one was just beautiful.
It really was. It really was. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. And you know what? Fingers crossed on the Parker Solar Probe. I know it's just waiting for its vacation. It's a very sunny vacation. Awesome job. Now, Athena.
One other thing, too, since we've been keeping track of it, this was the 21st launch for the United States overall this year, 21st orbital launch for the United States. If the Delta IV Heavy had taken off, we'd be at 22, but we'll hopefully be able to report on that next week.
Well, we look forward to it, and we expect it. So if it doesn't go through and doesn't work, then you know what? We're blaming you, Mike. That's just how it is. That's what you signed up for on this show. Full responsibility.
No.
Yes. You better be nervous.
I'm very nervous.
All right, Athena, and it looks like we have some star-making fuel, maybe, or?
Yes, so it's dwarf mergers, which gets me really, really exciting because I kind of feel like dwarf galaxies are totally underappreciated. So this gets me really excited because there's so much potential in dwarf galaxies alone because they contain a lot of hydrogen gas. And you know, they tend to get outshined literally by other galaxies like the Milky Way galaxy because they're just so much more luminous, they're really bright. And dwarf galaxies are kind of hard to trace sometimes. But there was a few research papers I was actually reading recently about dwarf mergers that when sometimes you have a dwarf galaxy, if it actually gets pulled in by the gravitational pull of another galaxy that's much larger than it, it can cause it to whip its like a tail out into interstellar space that can stretch to about 1 billion light years in length. And this literally can seed new star formation, which is super exciting because like for a lot of us out there, we want to try and find life beyond Earth. We want to find other planets, and exoplanets are found around, well, other types of stars and other stars that are out there. So this gets me really excited. This right here actually is a computer simulation. So, the astrophysicist behind this study, her name is Sarah Pearson, and it's really cool because I recognize her name and I know her from Instagram, which is really cool. And this was her study that actually got her her
social
PhD.
Media.
Literally, I was actually talking to her on my way over here. So this is a computer simulation of a dwarf galaxy merging with another galaxy that's much larger than it. And this was the first time that there was a computer simulation directly matched up with real observational data.
Nice.
So this is really, really exciting. And it shows that a lot of times that from this hydrogen gas that's found in these dwarf galaxies, when they merge like this, it will start to form and it'll cause literally the necessary seeding elements for stars to form. So this is a very exciting study. Right now, we actually still don't even know really how galaxies gain a lot of their mass. So the more that we can understand about this, the more we'll understand just about what's happening elsewhere in the universe. The fact that this actually is happening so near to us, and actually the Small Magellanic Cloud is what's actually merging with the Milky Way. We've actually stripped gas from the Small Magellanic Cloud, and that's actually what's caused a lot of the stars that we know that have formed here. So again, I mean, star formations. This is a gorgeous picture of actually a dwarf galaxy, and this is just it's up in the right hand corner. It's just a zoom in image, but I thought it was really pretty, so I wanted to share it with you guys. Not actually specifically to this study, but I wanted to just show you guys an example of a dwarf galaxy because they're very, very dim. But again, they contain all the elements for new stars. So again, this is super exciting. I can't wait for more of this research to come out because again, like with more stars forming, you know, more potential for planetary formations to happen, maybe around these stars and maybe other planets, and with, you know, tests and all the exciting stuff once James Webb launches, seeking for exoplanetary systems in life. So anything that has to do with trying to find other stuff,
other little critters out there.
Exactly.
Totally.
So this is, I'm super stoked.
Yeah, and I love the fact that you mentioned that, dwarf galaxies often, they're not necessarily overlooked, but they don't get as much attention because they're not as glamorous as like Andromeda or the Milky Way. But there's still so much to be learned, like you said.
Yes.
I mean, even when it comes to, exploring exoplanets and then learning more about galactic evolution, I mean, there's so much knowledge to be had. So, I mean, thank you for highlighting the underdog. Not necessarily, not saying dwarfs are, the dwarf galaxies are underdogs, but for bringing light to this really amazing research.
Yeah. He's getting real excited. But yeah, Chris.
Dwarf galaxy, right? I mean, we have our own. It's the small Magellan.
Yeah, it's like our little. I mean, not to be demeaning to it, but I always imagined it like our little puppy. It's like our little puppy, or like our little brother. It's just like,
Yeah.
And then like Andromeda's our big scary sister. Like, she's coming at me.
Yeah, and when that merging happens, that's going to be insane. Andromeda and Milky Way. Woo!
All right,
Wish
Mike.
I could be alive.
We'll see. All right. So you know what? I can just tell you're bursting at the seams with excitement because apparently NASA's going to be funding some of your favorite missions potentially.
Yeah, and a lot of these missions, you guys, some of them we've been talking about on previous shows, and some of the people watching might already be familiar with these, but they've invested some money for research and development for lunar landers, also for the commercialization of the International Space Station, and there's been some progress, too, from Sierra Nevada for one of their contracts already to provide habitats for the Lunar Orbiting Platform Gateway. So, oh man, I'm really excited about all of this stuff. For the lunar landers, of course, they invested a little bit of money into Blue Origin. This is for their propulsion and the navigation radar for it. But they also gave some money to Astrobotic, who is going to be getting studies for the lander's engine as well as their navigation radar. So kind of the same contract as Blue Origin. And United Launch Alliance also got a contract as well. And this is for their ACES upper stage. Oh man, something that's really cool about this is it's going to fund the integrated vehicle fluids flight demonstration, which is the demo flight of the whole system that they have that would be able to reduce the boil off so that they don't lose fuel. And it's also a necessary technology that they need in order to do fuel transfers and refueling in orbit so that they can eventually possibly have their own lunar lander one day. We do have a couple of other images that is from some of the other stuff. There is also some funding that they got for their mid-air retrieval demonstration of the Vulcan engine. And there's also a bunch of contracts that were put out for the International Space Station. Axiom Aerospace got some. There's the ACES engine, and there's the refueling that they would be doing with that. And eventually, actually, one of our favorites, Maston Aerospace, would be working with them to do the lunar lander version of that. But for the International Space Station, in order to lead the handover of the International Space Station from NASA to the commercial sector, they've awarded a lot of different study contracts to companies that are already involved. And something that I really like about this is not only is it going to be for existing stuff like the commercial cargo vehicles, but a lot of habitats and different studies on how to manage the space station. Axiom Space is one of the companies that is getting funding for this. Bigelow Aerospace for their whole X-Space concept, which you see on screen there, is getting money. Boeing and Blue Origin are also getting money as well. And it's kind of unclear what the study would be exactly for Blue Origin for it. But also there is some really interesting stuff going on with Sierra Nevada. Oh my goodness. They have made a lot of progress on their proposal for the lunar orbiting platform. The first piece of that being the power and propulsion element. And oh my goodness, they have something that I like about this and the way that all these contracts work that I'm talking about is they're fixed price contracts. So that NASA doesn't award any money to any of these companies until they see results. Sometimes it is just a study, a paper study needing to get data or whatever might be necessary. Some of it is demonstration missions and some of it's actual, full-blown missions. So now that Sierra Nevada has made progress with the different pieces of their plan for the lunar orbiting platform, they have received a little bit of money for that program, which is actually called the Next Step 2 program. Oh, man. But Northrop Grumman Innovation Systems has also gotten money for continued operation of Cygnus. Sierra Nevada also is getting money for their Dream Chaser cargo vehicle. And there is a bit more as well for the Lockheed Martin and Boeing habitats that could potentially be added to the International Space Station or would be for the lunar platform. This is a cutaway of Lockheed Martin's habitat and could be flown on the first or second exploration mission of Orion. So there's a bunch of different things that could be done here. And seeing NASA being serious about handing over the operations of the International Space Station to the commercial sector gives me hope that we'll be able to extend its lifespan even further and get the full use out of it. In fact, there was a survey put out recently that said that we need to utilize the space station until at least 2028 just to finish the just the NASA experiments that are on the books right now. And a lot of that is the different tech demos and stuff that we need in order to ensure that humans survive to the trip to Mars. So that's why I'm excited about all of this stuff. And I'm really happy to see NASA putting money into research and development and doing it under a fixed price system and milestone based.
Yeah.
So, you don't get any money for it unless we see results.
Exactly. And that's why, first of all, thank you for telling us about all of those amazing things. It's kind of like Christmas in August, to be honest. And no, you're absolutely right. The fact that they're basing this on actual deliverables, that's how progress gets made. At the end of the day, money speaks, and this partnership between government and commercial, like you said, it's the way to go. It's not either or. It has to be, a fusion of both. So I'm really excited to see, some potential additions to the ISS, or at the very least, just using it to its full efficiency and making sure it lives out that lifespan. So we could see the culmination of all these amazing experiments that, so many people put so much effort into. So
absolutely.
Yeah, so thank you so much.
And I'd really like to know what the community thinks. What's their favorite piece of space technology that's gotten some research money recently?
Yeah.
What part of the Deep Space Gateway do you think where are you rooting for? Boeing, Lockheed, Bigelow, Sierra Nevada? Well, let us know what you think for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Let us know in the comments because, there's a lot of exciting stuff. As we heard from Mike, there's a lot of exciting stuff getting funded and researched. So, let us know, what are you most excited about? What, tickles you? So I guess speaking of tickling, apparently we have some ultra hot Jupiters that are a little bit more like stars than we previously might have thought.
Yeah, so I'm not sure how that has to do with tickling, but
no, me neither. But go with it. Just go with it. Pretend like it made sense.
Yeah, so I got super excited about this one because I have never heard about this before. It's so super ultra hot Jupiters. They're planets that are very similar to Jupiter in size, but I like to call them kind of a yin-yang planet because their atmosphere is like split in half, because half of it is very hot because they orbit really close to their star, and the other half is really cold. So they actually have like these crazy atmospheres, and they say that it's more of like a star-planet hybrid because its atmosphere is a lot more like atmospheres that are found on stars, which is insane. I didn't really actually know about this, and it's because the water molecules, so the hydrogen and oxygen, actually get torn apart from the radiation of a star close to it, that it actually causes it to have this completely different atmosphere. And it's around, they wrote this down, it's 2,000 to 3,000 degrees Celsius on one side, so on the day side, so the side that actually faces the star.
Toasty.
So here's like, this one is actually just an image, an artist's rendition of what it looks like, but it's just crazy because it is a planet, right? But half of it, it has this crazy atmosphere, very similar to stars. But then that other side, that's around 980 degrees Celsius, that's the side that is known as the night side, faces away from the star itself. And its atmosphere is a lot more like planets. So what some theories are right now that scientists are believing is what causes this is that the winds coming from the day side are blowing literally these torn apart molecules into the night side, and it allows for them to recombine and then form clouds. They condense and form clouds. So the hydrogen and oxygen molecules will recombine and condense to form clouds, creating more of that planet-like atmosphere. So it's super interesting. These are known as ultra hot Jupiters, and this hits home for me because they're very similar. They're compared a lot of times to brown dwarfs, and brown dwarfs are known kind of as like failed stars because they no longer can sustain nuclear fusion and they're very cold. But they do still give off some form of heat. They do give off radiation, and maybe you guys know about this, maybe you don't, but TRAPPIST-1, who gets excited about TRAPPIST-1? That is found around a low mass star, a brown dwarf star. And those planets are so similar to Earth, and they orbit really close to the brown dwarf. So, I mean, this gets me excited because it's just so trippy when you think about it, that there's a planet that half of it is similar to what a star's like, half of it's similar to what a planet's like. And to me, this just gives a whole new understanding to what planets are out there that we might actually end up finding and discovering. I mean, especially, to mention it again, James Webb, when that launches, and then what Tess is doing right now, finding exoplanets, I think that this is a whole new classification out there. Like I said earlier, known as star-planet hybrids. So one thing that they're looking to research coming up soon is to actually try and probe the night side, because it's been a bit difficult to try and gather some more research on that. But I really hope that we'll be able to do that in the future, because my goodness, imagine living on a planet where like one side you actually can survive in the dark side because it has these clouds, it has a planet-like atmosphere, and then the other side it's like a star. Like, I can't even. And that fluctuation of temperature, 980 degrees Celsius to 3,000 degrees Celsius. So it's just nuts. I got really excited when I read about this study. That's literally what I'm excited about. And yeah, I'm just wondering what you guys think. If you guys have heard about this, let me know. I literally have never heard of this before, until again, recently when I read about this. I knew about ultra hot Jupiters, but, as far as having this split atmosphere, that's just crazy. That's why I called it a yin yang type of planet, because half of it is like I said earlier, half of it's like a stellar atmosphere, half of it's like a planet atmosphere. So super exciting. I think it's going to bring a whole new understanding to what we think about planets out there, and maybe even how life might exist on these. Like you never know. I mean, especially with the extremophiles, like woof. So that's how I feel about it. I got really excited.
I mean, I'm out of breath.
It just goes to show, though. Yeah, this just goes to show the whole evolution of planets, and under the right conditions, how they can evolve into stars, and how stars under the right conditions can evolve into other different types of stars or eventually black holes. So it's fascinating.
Exactly. I mean, it takes the concept of the HR diagram, and it just puts so much more dimension to it. And one thing I have to say, Athena, I love how you always bring it back to, well, there could be life, or it could support life. We'll learn more about life that exists outside of our planet. So I have to give you props there, because
that's the root of astronomy, I think.
Right?
I mean, that's how I feel. It's always about trying to find what more is out there. I mean, every single research study I read, it's like, okay, well, this is obviously tied to a better understanding of how we're here, why we're here, where we're going, and is there more out there? Because there definitely is. It's just a matter of finding it and when we will. So sorry, I know you're saying stuff.
I was excited. I was listening.
Well, that's why I focus on the technologies, so that when we do discover life out there, we have a way of getting there.
And there you go. We are all, under one umbrella of a mission, and you've got your technology, you've got your theory, and I've got the great dad jokes to bring us all together. So there's that. But thank you. I mean, I think this goes along with your theme of your last story. Dwarf galaxies, oftentimes not too paid attention to by the general public, but again, you explained how interesting they really are. And then you have hot Jupiters. I mean, come on, you're not really a star, you're not a planet, what's going on with you? And yet you brought the relevance to it. So, I mean, thank you. I mean, now I'll pay more attention when I see a headline having to do with a hot Jupiter or a brown dwarf,
Yes.
Great.
Awesome.
So, before we toss it to Jared, who is actually going to be interviewing Chuck Ryan of Shuttle Resolution, we want to give a huge shout out to our lovely Escape Velocity citizens. These awesome friends contribute $10 per episode. They help make the show happen. So thank you for supporting us. If you are interested in becoming a citizen of tomorrow, go ahead and head on over to Patreon/TMRO. And don't forget the .com, patreon.com/TMRO. Thank you.
Right.
All right. And now we're going to go on a short little break. And when we return, we have Jared Head. And again, he is interviewing Chuck Ryan.
Look into her face, determination in her eyes. She won't give up or quit or fall for little fashion lies. Filled with awesome expectation. This girl's a fascination. And nothing in her way will keep her from her destination. Cause she's fire walking. She's fire walking. When it's hot, she keeps on moving. Through the heat, keeps on improving. Yeah, she's fire walking. She's fire walking to be free.
Well, hello again. again. So we are going to go ahead and throw it to Jared now. I know you've been waiting. He's got an exciting interview lined up for you. So Jared, go ahead and take it from here.
All right, thank you to everyone out there on the news deck. Welcome to the Observation Lounge here at Station...
Jared, your mic is on. Or
What's
it is
that?
off.
Oh, okay. All right, we'll make that the edit point then.
There we go.
So you're welcome.
Can I get a mic check from Chuck as well, please?
Yes, can we get a mic check from you, Chuck?
Mic check. 3, 2, 1.
Cool, sounds good.
All right, excellent.
Back from Black, Jade, you're up.
Oh. Well, hello again there. So I know you've been waiting. We've got an exciting interview lined up with Jared on the observation deck. So I will go ahead and throw it to Jared. Jared, what do you got for us today?
All right. Well, thank you, everybody out on the news deck. We're now here on the Observation Lounge of Station 204. I'm Jared, and we're going to be talking to Chuck Ryan today. Chuck, welcome.
Great. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Yeah, good to meet you, too.
Good to be on the show.
Yeah, and we're going to be talking a little bit today about sort of what we're calling the space shuttle you've never heard of. But before we get into that, tell us a little bit about yourself, because you have quite a colorful history with things.
Colorful, I guess you could use that term. Well, it all started on Halloween '64 when I was an orphan. I was born an orphan on the day of the first astronaut fatality. Captain Theodore Freeman was flying his T-38 jet and ran into a snow goose landing at Ellington Airfield outside of NASA in Houston. And that I didn't know that until later, obviously. But I like to mention him because he's one of these astronauts. He was an astronaut candidate for Apollo. And, he gave the ultimate sacrifice, and very few people hear about him. And I like to make sure that everybody knows the sacrifices that have been made for the space program. And, I was running NASA at 8. I actually moved from California at the end of the runway at Moffett Field, Ames, to Michigan on July 16th, 1969, underneath Apollo 11 on its way to the moon. Another just bizarre coincidence.
Yeah.
And at 8, I was running NASA, trying to volunteer, and I learned what it took to be an astronaut. So I got my advanced scuba certification at 13. I was flying airplanes over my house at 15 without my parents knowing it.
That's a heck of a thing to be doing without your parents knowing.
We were
about
at the end of the runway too. So hi. I suspected my dad, kind of knew, but then at 18, I sent a duty felt letter to NASA, and by the time I arrived in California with a decrepit British sports car, they said, you want to volunteer? Sure, because constant hiring freezes and budget cuts and so forth. So I've worked on 8 different programs at 3 NASA centers at this point. I got to work on the Quiet Short Haul Research Aircraft. That was my first one as a volunteer. Then I was picked up as a civil servant and got to fly on the Kuiper Airborne Observatory, which is a modified C-141 SP with a 1-meter infrared telescope in it.
That's awesome.
And, they gave I'm like 20. They gave me flight suits and jackets. I have my NASA nameplate. I'm flying on this aircraft exploring space. There's...
As one does, in their early 20s. So.
Yeah. I also worked in the beginning with the SOFIA program, which is the Stratospheric Observatory for Infrared Astronomy. It's a 747 with a 10-foot diameter telescope.
Bigger.
And then the big wind tunnel at Ames.
Okay.
I got accepted to Cal Poly to study astronautical engineering. My branch chief or group leader went there, so go there. And during the summers, I would work in Houston. And I got to work with the Lunar Mars Exploration Office, Planet Surface Systems, Space Station Program Office, and the Mission Operations Directorate. And that was wonderful. That was really, I got to support a couple shuttle launches. I got to meet Gene Kranz, who is just a fantastic symbol of the program. Mm-hmm. And then the trouble started. I was very gung-ho and saw the challenges facing NASA, and I wanted to do something about it. So I created this university-based organization called SPAN, Support and Promotion for the Activities of NASA. And the idea is we would do outreach, education, and small engineering projects. Well, we did all that, but then the phrase that should never be uttered was, and that is, how hard can it be? It's just a structure. You know, a shuttle is just a structure, really, when you boil it down.
Yeah.
And we're engineers, kind of.
It's
you
just
know, we're students.
It's just sheets of stuff,
just structure.
Yeah.
You know, no problem, right? Problem. So we started to build this shuttle mock-up, and the school wasn't exactly happy with it. You know, they weren't making money, and you know, there's a 2-story structure materializing at the hangar. There's news up there all the time, so they politely asked me to move it off campus, and it wound up in Santa Maria on a migrant strawberry farm, and at a certain point, I realized it took a level of commitment that was just going to be everything, you know. So I had a support building I moved into and just started working on it. And I got a call from the fire rescue department at the Kennedy Space Center. And they said, we've learned about this. We've needed one for a long time. Chuck, your country needs you, NASA needs you. And that's a quote. Now, talking about telling the right person the wrong phrase, or the wrong person the right phrase, that was it for me. That was the swashbuckling mission that I really wanted.
Like, it's on now.
It's
Here
on.
we go.
In fact, the name of of my mock-up was the Resolution. But when they asked for it, I added the exclamation mark to the end of the name, and that was it. It was it was on. So construction continued. Most of the original structure had been destroyed, so it was almost like building a new shuttle. And this is what NASA calls a shuttle crew compartment trainer. So it's from the nose to the cargo bay. In fact, they wanted a little bit of cargo bay too. And you could rotate it into launch configuration to practice rescuing the astronauts on the pad, or you know, post landing.
Yeah.
You could use it for the suit techs, the closeout crew, the guys that strap them into their seats. There was just there were a couple problems. First of all, NASA has these in Houston, these crew compartment trainers. It takes dozens of people, 2 years and $1 to 2 million tax dollars to build one. I was alone with no money and on the wrong side of the continent. So if you can imagine the front of a 747, and you have to get it from the Pacific Ocean to the Atlantic Ocean, that's not so bad, except that every rail guy from coast to coast said no. It's impossible. If you even attempt to send it, we'll turn it back at the Mississippi. So I sent it anyway.
Wow.
3 months later, it had to go as a high-wide. They had to, you know, stop rail traffic through the United States. And I'm plotting it each day as I work on the seats and switches in Utah. And when it got to the Mississippi, that was the, you know, the nail-biting experience.
Yeah, this is the moment.
It sailed over, and it not only got to NASA. NASA lost it at one point, I will say. It got hooked up to the wrong train and taken back up to Jacksonville. And so I get to Florida. It arrived at Kennedy the day after return to flight. I think it was STS-114. And as one shuttle launched, another one entered. They both kind of looked at each other, I like to think. And what they did is they hooked it, the Resolution, in 3 building-sized pieces on this 89-foot rail car. They hooked it up to solid rocket booster segments coming from Utah. So, you know, it even had, and they not only took it into NASA, but there's what's called the controlled access area around the vehicle assembly building and the orbiter processing facilities, the hangars, and it went right through there, hooked up to SRBs, and then they separated it. So shuttle SRB SEP was actually on a train.
Gotcha. Okay.
And it became the only other shuttle to be amongst the fleet at Kennedy.
Wow. So this handcrafted shuttle, your handcrafted shuttle, was at Kennedy Space Center for a time. So.
Yes. And the understanding was that it'd be taken off to be finished. So I had to have a police escort through NASA, and that was quite a little spectacle. And then we got it reassembled, and it was being worked on. See, I was cold most of the time in Florida. It's like this windswept, tumbleweeds and so forth. I was buzzing the farmers in a plane with Bart Simpson on the tail, I told you. But Florida was a different animal altogether. And by animal, I mean alligator. But there was a lake adjacent to where the shuttle was, and it was off-grid. So I had to use solar power to power the tools and lights and so forth. And I was incorporating it into the shuttle to be solar powered also. And yeah, it was 100 degrees and 100% humidity every day. And the lake was beautiful, but it wasn't even refreshing. It was hot. And the first night there, I saw what looked like contrails on the surface of the water in the sunset from all the alligators swimming in it. And I'm like, well, I can't swim in that. But as time goes on, you realize, hey, I'm top of the food chain on this planet. So I, little by little, started, until finally I'm just swimming. I don't care. I did have a dive knife and a scuba fins and a mask to give me a fighting chance. And the alligator would literally come over when I did this. I don't know why that was. I still don't understand that. But then I was in it during Hurricane Wilma. But then Tropical Storm Faye sailed toward us like a warship and anchored over NASA for 4 days and 4 nights. That lake next to the shuttle just grew until the shuttle was in the lake. In the flashes of lightning at night, waves were crashing over the nose of the Resolution in a maritime-like tragedy. But that wasn't the cannonball that sunk the ship. As we are all aware, every 4 to 8 years, a new president comes into office and basically cancels whatever manned spaceflight program was going on. And that's what happened here. The Constellation program was canceled, and the shuttle was prematurely retired. And it was very frustrating to be right at the finish line, with the amount of effort, and hundreds of companies had pitched in, coast to coast, donating material, equipment, and services for the Resolution. This is what I would like the legacy of the Resolution to be, is that I'm not alone in this. Maybe a dramatic example, but I'm not alone. I stand side by side with my NASA brothers and sisters in this. Tens of thousands of engineers, scientists, and support personnel and contractors spend decades with tens of billions of tax dollars, ultimately to have their program canceled by a politician. And I think NASA has been used as a political football long enough, for 50 years. To list some of the programs that were canceled: Apollo 18, Apollo 19, Apollo 20, Assured Crew Return Vehicle, not to mention a shuttle launch complex at Vandenberg, but that's Air Force side. Lunar Mars Initiative, Constellation. How long is this madness going to continue? Yeah. And I feel it's time to get NASA in the hands of a decadal survey, a panel of scientists and engineers that come together every 10 years. There is a precedent for this at JPL. This is how they handle the unmanned missions, and it works fine. And I'd like to see that happen because, as you know, we have the STEM program in the United States, and that is a way to artificially motivate people to go into science and math. And I'm what they call a child of Apollo, growing up during the moon mission or being born during all of that. And you didn't have to artificially motivate us. We were on it,
Yes.
And it was our generation that the Apollo generation passed the torch to. And that's one reason I created SPAN. That's why I did the Resolution, and that's why I'm here today, is to carry that torch on.
And what do you think it's going to take in order to carry that torch, or to pass that torch on to future generations?
Well, like I said, getting NASA in the hands of a decadal survey is the way to go. Because then we wouldn't have this every 4 to 8 years, having it canceled and starting almost from scratch. That's no way to get things done. And we need a consistent effort. I was thrilled during the Apollo-Soyuz test project and doing things with the Russians. And it does need to be an international effort to go to Mars. Space is laid out like a lesson plan, I always thought. First there's suborbital, orbital, the moon, Mars. It's a nice lesson plan, And I don't think we should jump steps. I think when I worked with the Lunar Mars office, we talked about the in situ resource utilization that we're going to use. And the idea is you land, you have a little process, a plant, so to speak, not a plant, but like a industrial plant that will harvest oxygen and hydrogen out of the regolith, or the Martian soil. And that way, with hydrogen and oxygen, you have everything. You have air to breathe, you have water, you have rocket fuel and oxidizer. But that's takes some skill, and it takes practice, and the moon is 3 days away. So it's a safer way to go about it. Mars is much farther. It's a much higher level of difficulty that we shouldn't just jump into.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and do you think that in trying to kind of figure out where we should go to something like the recently revived National Space Council, does it kind of fit in with that, or is it a little different from kind of what you're thinking about to help out?
No. The National Space Council is made up of a lot of Defense Department individuals, people from Transportation Office, and I don't see how that's helpful. That's not my call, of course, but that's not. I wouldn't have made that decision, and I don't think that's necessary.
Yeah, and I was just seeing there's they've got the Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense, and a lot of people in the interior of the U.S. government working on that.
I'm adamant that I'm Trek, not wars. I want NASA to be exploration and discovery, and not defense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Pretty cool. So, do you still work for NASA, by the way? Because one of our viewers, Stormer, on our chat room, is asking if you still work for NASA.
Not currently. I was actually on my way back to school. I was in school and decided to change schools. I wanted to go back to the Midwest, and I thought, well, I'll go through Los Angeles, and I have the book about the resolution that I wrote on a Lakota reservation in South Dakota, which was very interesting. And I wasn't going to write the screenplay, but it just kind of happened. It was kind of therapeutic, maybe. And I thought, well, I'll go to L.A. and pitch that for a little bit. So I'm here doing that before going back to school.
Gotcha. So you are kind of going from NASA to movies with it there. I guess that's a way to say it.
Just this one.
Just this one. Okay.
Yeah.
So you're just going to give it a shot and see what happens.
Right.
So.
Right. I mean, it's really a no-brainer, I think. And there hasn't been a NASA movie for the last 48 years of our history. Apollo 13 was about 1970. Hidden Figures was about 1960. The new one about Armstrong is about 1969. So, and more people have given their lives during the Shuttle era than the Apollo generation even. So it's really time for us to have a movie, a NASA movie for our generation.
Mm-hmm. So something a little more in line with what people may be a little more familiar with.
Sure. We've been living off Apollo heritage. It certainly shouldn't be forgotten. It should be celebrated. But also, there's a whole generation of shuttle flights that, is a legacy also. And that's what's great about this story is that you see what happens at NASA in the background. And it actually parallels what had happened to the resolution.
So with the idea of making a shuttle era movie, what do you think would be sort of the best spot to do that in? What would be that mission that you'd really want to focus on?
Well, that's why my oddball story is great for that. Because I moved through Ames and Johnson Space Center and the Kennedy Space Center, and you see what's going on at NASA. In fact, I volunteered at NASA at 18, partly because there were so many budget cuts and hiring freezes. I was there during the Challenger accident. I had the resolution getting ready to leave for Florida during the Columbia accident. I was actually had the privilege of getting on board Columbia. Getting dimensions for the resolution at one point. My cohort, Casey Caton Chipwadia, who was in SPAN, and we became brothers through the whole thing. He was subsystems manager for crew escape hardware at the Johnson Space Center. And he was on the investigation for Columbia. In fact, took off from grad school to do that. Just one of the finest individuals I've ever had the privilege of meeting. And that's one of the things that happened after the cancellation of Constellation and the premature retirement of Shuttle, is people left NASA in waves, and it was just heartbreaking, and certainly not what we want.
Was it like a true brain drain at the end of that program for NASA? Is that kind of how it went?
No, it was having everything canceled after, continuously after so much effort is. People got fed up, and the United States is grounded right now. And that's sad, and that's certainly not a situation that you want. And it's almost like we don't have astronauts. We pay the Russian space program to take our astronauts up. So really, they're American cosmonauts at this point. And that's, for what's supposed to be the greatest country in the world, that's just not, it's not what you want.
We do have a question from our Twitch chat room from Handy's Vorwerp, which is, what do you think about all the new rocket companies like SpaceX and Blue Origin and others? Do you think that that's sort of something that's going to help out with that?
Elon is hot right now. I think it's wonderful. Of course, NASA goes outward and explores and discovers, and then commercial space comes in behind that. That's a logical sequence, and then even tourists and commercial ventures. So I do think that SpaceX is going to be a player in it, for sure. And we didn't have that when they canceled the Lunar Mars Initiative back in the late 80s. We didn't have Elon and SpaceX. So this is going to really help us. It gives us more of a chance of actually making it happen. So that's wonderful. Blue Horizons and things like Virgin Galactic. That's going to be great to raise awareness when tourists finally get to go into suborbital flights. But sure, this is certainly going to help.
Yeah, and kind of just to go back a little bit and talk a little bit more about Shuttle Resolution, which you built. What ended up happening with Resolution? Because you talk about taking it to Kennedy Space Center, but what actually truly happened to Resolution? Well,
the tropical storm Faye damaged it. There was water damage, and the planks of the it's surrounded by scaffolding, if you can imagine, and the planks were being blown off during the high winds and waves crashing over it. It was just awful. And while it was being repaired, the shuttle program was basically ended, and NASA came out, did a survey, and it was really there wasn't a need at that point. So we looked around for an outfit to take possession of it so it would get good use. And there was a camp, like a space camp kind of thing that was materializing in Florida, and they had taken possession of it. Unfortunately, that fell through, and the Resolution became basically a shipwreck. And I'm reminded of the story of Ernest Shackleton and his ship, the Endurance.
At the South Pole.
At the South Pole. It was crushed to splinters in the ice there. And it's not the tragedy of the ship that is remembered. It's the perseverance of the captain and crew and the story of that. The Resolution started out as a shuttle trainer, but it became much more than that. It had 3,000 miles on it at the end. I mean, it was really kind of a ship of discovery for me, Yeah. And the funny thing about it was, too, and I took pictures along the way, it had been moved a dozen times. And, because housing developments come in and you have to move it again. And moving a two-story building, not fun at all.
Not easy.
But I would take pictures out the main hatch. And it had seen so many different landscapes from coast to coast. It had gone through the shuttle launch complex at Vandenberg along the Pacific. It went through Los Angeles and through Houston, through the Kennedy Space Center, became part of the, briefly, the only other shuttle to be part of the fleet. So it really had a journey, and it has kind of an impressive logbook, I think.
Yeah, and people would see it as it was being transported, right?
Yeah, I would. Yes, of course. A lot of people didn't know what it was, and we were going to put like shuttle stickers and stuff on it. But the idea was, we were trying to keep a low profile with the railroads, seeing that they didn't want it to go.
Gotcha.
But when we loaded it, and even when it was shrink wrapped, there were people running out there with cameras, because the flight deck, and it was vertical. Each of these segments were vertical, and it's a different feeling, even in a shuttle trainer, to be in a vertical configuration. It has this feeling of earnestness, like we're going to be underway. You know?
You're on the stack. We're ready to go.
Yeah,
it's time to light it, and we're going to get to T0 as soon as we can and make it happen.
Exactly. So. And I had the privilege of seeing 13 shuttle launches while I was in Florida, and I would park in the Launch Control Center parking lot, which is basically as close as you can be. And it was fantastic to be able to see that. Of course, I was green with envy the whole time during every flight, but.
Yeah. So, what was your favorite thing about Shuttle Resolution? Was it coming up with it? Was it building it? Was it moving it?
It was. I can't speak for everybody else, but I wanted a swashbuckling mission, a special way to serve, And I had grown up with tales of the military, I don't know if you've ever seen MASH, and you see these people, and they were doctors, medics. And so they're doing something good in a bad situation, and they were suffering. And my father was in the Navy, and it was always my intention to serve. And this was my way to serve. This was my unique thing to do for NASA. And the Shuttle Resolution story isn't over. This is the finale of it, me being in Hollywood trying to get this movie made, because it could really have an impact, I think. And it's fun and, and serious and fatalistic, and it has all the elements that everybody wants, so.
Yeah, and in kind of thinking about that ability to give service, and with that, we've got a really good question from our own Mini Stoge here in the studio, which is asking, what advice would you give to citizens who want to help with NASA programs? Like, what's the best thing that those of us who aren't involved in NASA can actually do that makes a meaningful impact with NASA?
Well, there used to be letter writing campaigns. But and that's always helpful, talking to your representative and Congress personnel. And I think we really have to see what the problem is and see that it's being used as a political football, and really to get on board with this idea of getting NASA into the hands of a decadal survey. And I think that's really a great way to go about it. And just by going to the NASA website a lot, the NASA Twitter pages, the more you're looking at NASA and the more support they have, the harder it is for the politicians to say no to their programs.
Mm-hmm. And Chuck, for folks who'd like to get more info about you and the story of Shuttle Resolution, how can they do that?
There's shuttleresolution.com. No exclamation mark in that one. It's also there's Chuck Ryan on Twitter. There's also Chuck Ryan Facebook and a Resolution Facebook page.
So multiple places you can go to find out about
yes,
it.
and I'm doing it's in work right now, a YouTube series called From NASA to Florida, or From NASA to Hollywood, sorry. Mm-hmm. And the idea is, have you ever thought about leaving your life and going to Hollywood to try to have a movie made? Well, it's kind of like that, except that we're coming from NASA, kind of. And like my car was stolen with all my luggage in it at one point since I've been here, so get to update my wardrobe. So,
yeah, that's I suppose one way to do it.
And I did get the car back, but look for that From NASA to Hollywood, and that should be entertaining at the very least.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on our show today, Chuck.
Well, thank you for having me.
We really appreciate you coming on and talking to us about Space Shuttle Resolution, and now our viewers know about a space shuttle that they might not have known about that actually does exist. So
exist.
Yes. Yeah. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
And we're going to come back with your comments from last week's show. So stay tuned. There's more tomorrow right after this break. All right. All right. Should I redo that?
Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha. Whoops. I forgot about that because I didn't write it down.
We've got a cut point when he changes cameras, so bring you up here and
gotcha.
Speak into this camera.
All right. So before we go to our break, we want to thank our citizens of tomorrow, especially of the escape velocity variety. These folks give us $10 or more per episode. But of course, we also have our orbital citizens as well. These folks give us $5 or more per episode. And you get a lot of goodies no matter what level you're at. So if you'd like to help contribute to our show, head on over to patreon.com/TMRO. And now we are going to take a break. So there's more tomorrow coming up right after this.
Science. It both draws us together and tears us apart. Brings discoveries to cure us and threaten us. It is neither good nor evil. It is what we decide to make of it. There is so much more to learn. And we are curious. Together, let's explore the science of tomorrow.
Nice one, Ben.
I was like, what's happening?
That was, wow.
Oh my gosh.
Sold.
We need other cameras in
Wow.
here. Security
Ben
cameras that catch
just,
that.
like-
We need a three-dimensional
He
experience.
just duck and roll.
Ben just seriously tucked and rolled.
Stop, drop, and
to
roll.
the point that
There
I
was no
saw his
fire.
underwear.
I feel the static that got built up from there. Like, I feel like I'm going to shock somebody if I touch them.
That was,
That was so much good.
I would say
Rug
that was
rolling.
impressive, but it really wasn't. It was kind of sad.
I'm
That's
kind
probably the best way to get off camera, and I couldn't make a decision, so I just rolled in the most awkward way possible.
Hey, you saw an opportunity and you went for it.
We
Don't
were
let Jared rain
so-
on your parade.
That was good.
Gosh, we are so professional here.
Oh, gosh.
Since we're in an edit point anyhow.
We are amazingly professional.
Take 300. Oh, and just to clarify, Ben, then,
I know.
so we can't say welcome back to the conversation anymore?
No, we definitely don't want to say that.
Welcome back to
That's
a
the
rolling
whole
good
us.
time.
Water's just fine.
Roll that beautiful Ben footage. Did we even like catch that? We need like a GoPro just like
That's
sitting
what I'm
there.
saying. There so needs to be something
So,
else.
We actually did.
because I know how much Ben loves GoPros.
So
I
good.
don't mind GoPros. They just don't work on rockets.
We'll just put a GoPro on a buoy.
A boo.
All right, you're good. I hate you all.
Oh man.
Oh man.
Hi.
Oh man, indeed.
Are we not using that camera?
I should have had my phone on me like a
Is
millennial.
the intro going to be to that one?
Did we actually do this show?
For camera one.
Is that?
I'm just gonna come up. You go to the camera that's got the light on it.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I'm just so used to having it be there first. I'm sorry.
We're not doing the citizen slates up front anymore.
Yeah,
Oh,
citizens
okay.
are
Oh, yeah,
they're
no,
at the end
I know
now.
that, but I just...
So-
Okay, so it's just going to
we
be all
love
of
our
us
fans.
at
Yeah.
once. Okay,
Yeah.
well, I understand that now. Apologies. All right.
You want to try again?
Absolutely, sir. Well, hello again, TMRO. Welcome back. So we are actually going to start delving into the comments from last week's show. And in case you were there, or maybe you weren't, we actually got to interview Peter Beck of Rocket Lab. A really, really fascinating interview. You
was
guys
so much fun.
seemed to love it. I know Jared did for sure.
So good.
So let's just go ahead and dive right into what you had to say. The first comment is actually from Marnix Jansen on YouTube. They stated, though I think Mike did a good job, I have to say that boy, did I hate those launch minutes. Way too much text, couldn't follow it all, no time for questions from the others. It was a bad plan, perfectly executed. What?
Aw.
It was a bad plan, but it was perfectly executed. So, okay, so pretty
On
much,
that
yes,
note,
Space
that's
Boy
why
did a
we
good job, but it was
tried things a little bit differently today.
Exactly.
We decided that we still want to have things be, quick and concise for the launch minute because that's just a really nice thing that we like. But then afterwards, we'll have a little bit of wrap up where we can talk a little bit more about it, talk about how we feel about the launch was, what our favorite part of it was, answer any questions that might be in the chat room, and just talk, amongst ourselves about it. So. In the future, we're going to try this out where we'll do the launch minute and then kind of have a little wrap up afterwards to talk about each one in maybe a little bit more depth if there's even something to talk about. Sometimes, like with a Chinese launch, we might only have that bit to say for the launch minute and not really have much to say about it afterwards. So it really depends on what launch it is, what type it is, all that sort of thing. But so I hope that you guys liked what we did today, where we discussed the launch afterwards a little bit. So.
Yeah, exactly. And that's like the philosophy of TMRO, is constantly improving. I mean, the idea of launch minutes is actually pretty ambitious when you think about it. Like, that's so much information to try to condense into a minute and then not completely stumble over every other word. So, I mean, personally, I think you did great the first time. And again, thank you for the feedback. We always take it into account, and you and your comments is what helps us make a better show. So, moving on, the next comment is from Francisco Pinto, also via YouTube. Francisco stated, Mike, what a good job. Assuming it was not previously recorded, of course. The interview with Peter was probably the best I've seen in 2018, and I've seen them all. Jared is doing such a good job.
Thanks.
The show is getting very professional. Impressive. I just hope you have more views to produce the audience you need.
Yeah. If we could just roll it all in, that'd be pretty great.
Right? I mean, of course, that's why we have, Patreon, and we're able to do all these amazing, fancy things, with support from viewers like you. But yeah, no, I mean, I think that they actually bring out a good point, Jared. Your interview skills
was
are
really
just
good.
on fire.
Well, I mean, the nice thing is that everyone we bring on the interview is really fun to interview and really great to interview. It's not.
True.
I mean, it's just
and the comments feed it so well.
Exactly.
The comments in the chat, you guys come up with really good questions. So even if where there wasn't too much plans, which there usually is, which is nice, there's always great material here.
It's like the perfect storm all the time.
It's not all me. I mean, it's
mostly you. But it's kind of everything.
No,
I'm just kidding.
I mean, it's a very small part, but it's also the guest that comes on, the stuff that we get from the guests, the preparation. You as the viewers adding to the conversation.
You guys are like the sprinkles, they're the
like
frosting, we're the cupcake. Okay, cupcake.
Yeah, that makes sense. So
all comes together.
And then
Or
there's
those
just a
stuffed cupcakes.
tremendous amount of glitter thrown on top of it.
The edible kind, though, because I believe the inedible would leave you with some... You know I will, though. You know I will. Okay, moving on. This is also from YouTube. This is from Ann on. Hayabusa 2. Can you interview Elizabeth Tasker, the Brit astrophysicist who is working on JAXA's Hayabusa 2 mission, which launched in 2014, and right now is hovering over a tiny 900-meter asteroid 100 million miles away? It has 4 teeny tiny robot rovers and cameras to map the entire thing out. And it'll bring samples back to Earth in 2020. All for $150 million. Gambat, yo!
Wow.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing.
Guns blazing.
So, yeah. I gotta say, that would be great. I mean, the Hayabusa 2 has been a really cool mission. So, yeah.
Wow.
Absolutely.
Sick.
Yeah,
And
so
actually,
get them on then, absolutely.
Yeah, and then I think, when Mike was mentioning all of the projects and missions that NASA is now funding and putting some more time into, somebody actually mentioned the Hayabusa missions and stating, kind of all of the really, really neat things to come out of that. So, I mean, Elizabeth, if you're out there, we have a seat warmed up just for you. Jared's sitting on it.
Yes. Yes, I am.
And
I just want to say, to kind of build on this comment that we got from it, if you viewers know someone who you think would be a really great guest to have on the show, you should get in touch with us. And you should hook us up with them.
Yeah.
So, just saying.
give us a warm introduction, man.
Or maybe it's you.
At this point, we're just reaching in the dark and, just give us some, slide us some intros.
That would be pretty great.
We're here. Help us help you.
Yes.
All right. And then last but not least, this comment is from Johnny Spacer. He's an Escape Velocity citizen, and this comes straight from the TMRO community. Johnny states, I was late to the party, but not too late to hear Peter's preference for robots in space over humans. I found this interesting to say the least, and a bit taken aback. All in all, he's right. We humans are extremely fragile and high maintenance. Because of this, I think we need to utilize robotics, AI, and telepresence to the max. I'm not saying no to humans. I'm just saying let our tools, aka our robotics, AI, and telepresence, build our habitats before our arrival. That way we can have a relatively safe place in space from which we can survive and thrive, and then expand further out into our destiny. I like that.
I like that. I love that all of that was written in there because all of that was so relevant.
Yes.
Because I feel like so many times when we ask that question, robotic or human, there's a lot of opinions of human because we're all so eager, obviously, to go and to get space. But I think that formula of a plan to get the robots there, have them build first, and then we join. I definitely vote for that. I think it's a really good idea.
Yeah.
So yeah, when you said that, I'm glad that Johnny Spacer had repeated that. It was really good.
I thought that was pretty interesting as well because echoing that sentiment, I I mean, I appreciate the ambition and kind of the big dream of one day humans in, actual elongated space travel. But before we get ahead of ourselves, I mean, Johnny Spacer said it quite eloquently here. We're pretty darn fragile, and we're pretty darn high maintenance. I mean, I know we bring up tardigrades a lot on this show, which I'm not complaining about, but look at those guys. Look at how tough they are. They don't need fancy spacesuits that cost stupid amounts of money. And so, why not send our, robots out first, let them deal with the brunt of it, and then kind of fix it up for us a little bit,
Send tardigrades first, and then we go.
I mean, let the robots handle it. So that's what they're there for.
Yeah.
Robots don't complain when they run out of air. They don't they don't give you a 1-star review when you
They're not Yelpers.
when you fly them
They don't
through
need
10,000 rads.
There's no interpersonal issues, so there's no drama.
Yeah.
Robots are chill, man.
Robots are just like really good people.
I can't wait. I cannot wait until the very far future when we become the robots.
Okay.
And
So now we're getting back onto this conversation.
hologram.
I was going to say,
You kind of already are, I guess, right now.
I agree with that so much, and it's simply because of my sinuses. So that's why I'm so excited about that future, is because if it can get rid of sinuses, yes.
You see, all major innovations stem from some sort of just,
Discomfort in the human race.
Necessity is the mother of invention. I think, right?
That's right.
That's how it goes.
It sounds
Or
like
the
a lot of
stepfather
syllables.
of invention.
Curiosity.
I don't know.
Well, stepfather. Okay.
Anyways,
Well, so that concludes comments from last week. Be sure to drop your comments below so that we can address them next week. And before we actually head out, we want to give a humongous thank you to our citizens, especially of the escape velocity, orbital, and suborbital flavors. Escape velocity citizens contribute $10 an episode, orbital contributes $5 an episode, suborbital $2.50 an episode, and of course our ground support citizens $1 to $2.50 an episode. And again, as Jared had mentioned, as we like to mention throughout the show, you guys are what makes this show happen. So thank you from the bottom of our little hearts for supporting us. And if you would like to join the family, please head on over to patreon.com/TMRO. As always, do not forget to subscribe and ring that cute little bell that's in one of these corners.
Is it up there?
Go ahead and click on it because we're, of course, awesome and we love you. So with that being said, make sure you tune in next week because we are actually going to have Emery Stagmer, aka Max, on the show. And amongst many things, he's the lead satellite flight software engineer for NASA's La Crosse satellite. But I'm sure we will delve into a whole bunch of neat things about
anytime
that individual.
Anytime Vax. Yeah, anytime he comes on here, it's just literally like, "Hey, Vax, what do you want to talk about?" And he just goes for it. So, because if anybody knows it, Vax does.
Okay, sounds good. All right, so we'll keep the seats warm, and we will see you next Saturday at 21 UTC.
That's right. Wait, no, 1800 UTC.
1800 UTC.
We also do have a science episode next week.
And we also have a science episode next week.
So, yeah, there you go.
Which starts at 2100 UTC.
Yeah.
Okay.
Science starts at, where's mine? Science starts at 2030 UTC.
Oh, it's 2030.
30.
Right, 2030.
Yeah, it's on the half hour.
My ear
Which
here
is
is
1:30 Pacific.
my ear dealing. I can't hear anyone. Hold on.
Did your battery die? You should have
Snap,
a new battery.
snap.
Oh no, I just had to get it in.
Clap.
It was like falling out.
Cool.
Sorry about
Shuffle.
Yeah.
Good show, guys.
You don't have to lie. How was Griffith with Mars Closest Approach?
That was wild.
I'm
let me tell
sure.
you.
Oh my goodness.
So, who needs sleep when you've got Mars all night?
Got Mars on the mind.
It was cool though, because we had Buzz Aldrin come up, and I had not been told that Buzz was going to be there. So that was really cool. It's like my third or fourth time being around him. So
That's so exciting. How many? There was probably so many people that were there. It
Oh
was
yeah,
the entire hill coverage.
We had a lot of people, but it was a lot less than I was expecting. I think a lot of people stayed home and watched the live stream instead.
Yeah.
With it, we also had some other people. I can't remember his name, but he's a writer on the Orville and he wrote for Star Trek. I can't remember his name. Why can't I remember his name?
Seth MacFarlane?
No,
No, I know who you're talking about because what's his face posted about him.
Yes.
And he came up to the.
He's always around up at Griffith for events and stuff, and he's such a nice guy. Also, we had Tim Russ, who played Tuvok.
He came back?
On that, yeah. Well, not only, okay, so a lot of people don't know this. Tim Russ, he is a, hardcore amateur astronomer.
Yes.
During the show, when he was on Star Trek, he actually got interested in astronomy, and then he, took off with that. So not only did he come up and, say hello to us and let us interview him on air and everything with that, he had his own telescope there to allow people to look through it.
I love it.
Because that's why he was primarily there, to show off Mars to folks.
And he's the nicest guy.
He is such a good guy.
And if you ask him about why he got into space, it's just the most inspiring story. You just want to sit by a fire and listen to him speak.
He's
really
such a nice guy. So.
Was it?
Bring on another chair.
Yeah, I was actually going to say, I'm out of here. Because I'm going very far
you're going
away.
camping.
And I'm not going to be here next week, probably. So have fun, everybody.
If you can deal with it.
Ripping things out of my throat and sinus. So, so that should be fun. So as I was saying today, I'd much rather be a robot. Well, they're gonna go in and dig a little bit on Wednesday and get rid of the stuff.
Very nice.
So it's good. So I'm going to turn this off, and I'll see y'all in 2 weeks. So. That's right. Head out or something. I don't know.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Safe travels and good luck.
Take Jad's chair if you like.
Come on up.
Do I need
The weird chair. Do you want me here?
Do you want this one?
Oh, I didn't
Whichever one.
I can share yours.
Whichever one.
Do I need to keep this?
If you want to listen to Mike,
Okay.
you probably want to keep that.
Boy, that's.
That's up to you.
I'm like a
You don't have to
Borg
listen to
now.
Mike.
There it goes.
Mike, did you have any questions that you wanted to ask Chuck?
Hi.
Oh, hi. By the way,
I did want to ask if there
Jade.
was any if there was any connection that you had to the Constitution mock-up.
So Mike just asked you if there are any links that you had to the Constitution.
Constitution. Which one was that? What state was it in?
It was in Florida at least around the time of STS-135. They had it at the Kennedy Space Center, and it had a TDRS mock-up in the payload bay. And it was one of those that you could walk through it. It had one of those ramps that led up to the doorway for it. And of course, it was just a mock-up. I don't think it was any type of test article or anything like that.
Is that the one that was at the Astronaut Hall of Fame?
Maybe. If it was Constitution?
I don't think its name was Constitution, the one at the Astronaut Hall of Fame.
Oh, isn't that called in the chat? Is it called Independence?
Is that the one? Are you talking about the one that moved to Houston?
They swapped a couple of them at one point.
Not sure.
I'm
not sure.
So my understanding is that the one that was at the Visitor Center is the one that moved to Houston and is now parked on top of the SCA. And the other one that was at the Astronaut Hall of Fame, at least to my knowledge, is still on the Shuttle launch facility awaiting transport to somewhere else.
Yeah, they did a big reshuffling there at the end of the program. Some of the crew compartment trainers, I think one was loaded into a Super Guppy, and I think it's at the Air Force Academy, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, I didn't even mention it, but in the next issue of Flight Training from it's a magazine, part of the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association, they did a spread about the resolution.
Nice.
And they sent a photographer out to shoot me in front of Endeavour.
Oh, that's awesome.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah.
And I saw Endeavour being built as a baby.
Oh,
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, man. What was the most exciting part?
Well, me and the spanners, I'm dangerous if I have a telephone. I get, all the, like I said, all the material equipment and services donated to build the shuttle. So I called down to Rockwell. It was Rockwell Palmdale at that point, and wanted to get some dimensions and so forth. So I think we're going to be on the other side of bulletproof glass from it, right? And they took us to a conference room and they kind of told us, gave us a little presentation. And that's what I called the people in span is spanners.
Okay.
And we had a Spanimal house at one point also.
Wow.
So they lead us through these doors into an area with a very low ceiling. And then I kind of motioned to somebody, hey, that's a main gear right there. And we look up, and we were underneath the shuttle.
Wow.
But
wow.
And you know,
no bulletproof glass.
No, and it was funny too, because you know how I said, you know, how hard can it be? It's just a structure, right? Well, we saw Endeavour laid out like the world's largest model. Its cargo bay doors were over there, and the tail's over there, and everybody's looking at me. All right, well, it's a little hard, you know. So it was wonderful to get to see it being built like that.
Wow, that's insane.
Special moment.
Especially, being so close too. Wow.
Yeah, and I have pictures, you know, it says don't touch
Yeah.
the inside of the cargo bay doors, and, you know, I'm touching. And
Don't touch
Of course.
my
No.
I have a picture of me holding one of the handrails for one of the solar joints on the space station. When it was at the, they call it the SSPF, the Space Station Processing Facility. So you know, some of the modules are there before they're launched, and I got to see a lot of that. That was really fun.
Jeez, that's so neat to be like so close to the process of what ultimately, you know, goes out there. Because when they come back down, of course, we revere them rightly so as like these relics, as these, you know, kind of like treasures. So to be able to see it actually be made in the
Before it
beginning, like
happens,
that's surreal.
Yeah.
There's a question from Neuropilot in our Twitch chat. He asked if you would ever want to build an X-38C mock-up.
If I wanted to
Build one.
build one, you know, it's funny. I was just talking with a friend recently, and I'm like, you know, I wonder if they have an Orion, you know, mock-up for the fire rescue team trainer, and my friends would have me committed if I were to build something like that again. No.
You're done? No more building?
No more trainers.
Right.
I want to get back to NASA as quickly as possible and be part of the program, of course.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. Let's see if there's a question here, because there's so many.
Well, let's see. I see here Citizen 1933
Do it.
asks, would you be interested in working with private space companies like Blue Origin or Virgin Galactic in the future?
I wouldn't rule it out, but I'm not much of a capitalist, I'm afraid.
Oh, I understand.
I'm very idealistic and want to be part of the,
Well,
you know, the
speaking
exploration.
of non-capitalist places, Morton OG Katrin Hansen OG Brandt on YouTube asks, have you seen a picture of the USSR space shuttle rotting away in a hangar? How sad is that?
Have I seen
The
that?
USSR space
Oh,
shuttle.
yes, I did see that image. Yeah, Buran, yeah, terrible. Just, it's sad, these things. But, you know, it's like the Endurance, the ship, you know. I mean, it's not the ship itself that needs to be treasured. It's the journey that ship went on and the legacy of that vehicle or whatever. Yeah, yeah. So, you know, they'll be sad.
What kind of legacy do you think that the Resolution leaves behind?
Well, I want it. If they make the movie and it raises the awareness of the public as to what's been going on with the, you know, how frustrating the program has been to have every new administration come in and cancel everything that's being done, and if we get NASA in the hands of a decadal survey, that would be a tremendously beneficial legacy for the Resolution to have.
Do you have plans of going international with it? Would you want to? Would you want to go international with the movie?
With the film?
With the film? Sorry, yeah.
Well, I'm sure it would be. Yeah.
Did you have
yeah.
any ideas for that, or you were thinking of just sticking with Hollywood, as you were saying, from NASA to Hollywood? So
No,
that
I
like
want
that
them
idea, but
to market it to other audiences. And the funny thing is, I've been to 23 countries, and you know, my mother's always, "Why are you exploring the world?" I'm like, well, I can't go off and explore other worlds until I've explored my own. I said.
yeah,
That's my excuse, anyway.
that's a great way to look at it.
But people in other countries eat NASA up.
Exactly.
They love it. They love the space program, our space program.
Absolutely.
But the people in our country are just kind of, you know.
Kind of like lackadaisical about it.
I don't get it.
Exactly, and that's so fascinating you bring that up, because it just goes to show you that when it comes to, you know, topics like space and astronomy, it truly is, it's not, separated by borders. It's a human thing. It doesn't matter where you're from. Everybody looks up at some point and has that kind of insightful experience. Like, is there something out there? I want to know what's out there. And like you said, I'm sure there's this fascination not only with NASA, but some of the other space agencies around the world, just because they're literally doing what humans have been kind of fantasizing about for millennia. So
since we walked.
Exactly. It's such an innate, kind of part of the human experience.
Well, two interesting things, and they're in opposite directions too, is looking down on the Earth, of course. Most of the astronauts say that the thing that strikes them the most is there are no borders.
Exactly.
We're all one Earth.
Pale blue dot, yeah.
And in the other direction, one of the problems I think we're facing is that we have so much light pollution that we can't see the stars anymore.
100%. Exactly. And I've read there's been a few, I don't know if they are actual studies, but there's been a lot of analyses done on the fact that today's kids, today's youth, they do not see the same skies as, even our parents or grandparents used to see, where you'd go outside and it's kind of like, so the first time I ever saw a real night sky, I was 22. I'm sorry
Wow.
it took so long, but I was actually in Pismo Beach. Was not expecting it to get so dark, and it's awe-inspiring. It's going to sound a little dramatic, but it really is like paradigm shifting.
It is.
So if you can imagine, as a youth being raised, always looking at that, of course you'd have this disposition towards, exploration of space. But, just kind of like you said, the light pollution, it's hard to bring it back down to Earth when it's like you can maybe see 2 stars or 3 on a good day.
Well, I grew up in a 3-stoplight town in the forest in Michigan, so we had stars. But, I'd been away from it for a while, and I was in a place not that long ago. It was called Star Prairie, Wisconsin.
Aww.
And we were at this friend's house, and we were having a dinner party, and it was just such a lovely day. And I walked out after it had gotten dark, and I was not prepared.
Oh.
And I looked up,
It just
and
knocks you on your feet.
it was staggering.
Uh-huh.
And I'm calling everybody outside. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Exactly.
And yes, and I like the way you put it, paradigm shifting.
Yeah. I mean, especially when you first see that arm of the Milky Way, that just kind of looks like it just splashed across the sky.
Right.
You go to Joshua Tree. I mean, again, I'm kind of very speaking from a very encapsulated experience. If you grew up in Southern California, chances are you didn't see a lot of stars growing up.
Yeah.
I know there's still some more rural areas out there where it's still beautiful, but I mean, yeah, it's just it just takes you back to that innate human, fascination with what's out there.
Well, and it's interesting. What do we do to correct this? And there are movements in various areas to try to use different kinds of lighting, less lighting, and that's better for energy consumption, and it's better all the way around, really.
I have a question for you. You were mentioning earlier that people outside of the U.S. seem to be more infatuated with NASA than we are in the U.S. I actually disagree with that, but I want to bring up a question because I see something in the chat from Helio Pausing. They ask NASA. They say NASA shares everything. That is so important. So I wanted to ask you, why do you think it is that in our country, then, if we're not so aware of what NASA's doing, if NASA's sharing all this wonderful information online, what do you think is causing this backup from people to actually be researching it themselves? What do you think it's causing people to not actually find this stuff online when it's already there? NASA's sharing all their information on the internet. Well, so what do you think that is?
NASA shares, it's public domain.
Yeah.
But as I understand it, NASA is part of the executive branch of the federal government and cannot actively promote itself. It has to rely on the president to do that. So they're passive, basically. That you can go to NASA's website and get all the information that you want, but NASA can't really go out there too much. They do a little bit. I was on a reservation in South Dakota, and there's apparently a bus that can go around that gives mobile presentations to various schools, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
But yeah, they can't, there are no NASA commercials, you'll notice.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's
But there are Navy, Air Force, Marines commercials. So I don't know why that is.
Yeah.
Do you think it would be a good idea to have those commercials?
I think that would be fantastic.
Yeah.
There was a Lockheed commercial back in the day, don't want to date myself. This was during Mir, the Russian space station. And it was so dramatic. You got to look it up. It's on YouTube, and it's like right now, miles above the Earth, experiments are being conducted that could cure diseases and give us better metal alloys, and exploration is going on right now. And the whole during this monologue, there's a space station going over you as you're over the Earth, and then you see the Russian symbol on the bottom, and then it says, "Shouldn't we be there too?"
Oh, right in the
It
field.
was fantastic.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a big
So
drive.
yes,
Exactly.
Why do you think it is that even commercial space agencies haven't done that? Because, I mean, I understand federal, but with commercial space agencies, is there a reason you think that they actually didn't do
they will.
advertising?
They will. Virgin Galactic, I guarantee you, will start having commercials.
doing
Exactly.
Commercials.
Once it gets, because I think right now it's a matter of audiences and target markets. Like, who are they actually trying to reach? Right now, a lot of these privatized space companies, they're looking more towards like investors and like seed funders and different things like that. When it comes to NASA, raising awareness, it's not just for that initial capital. It's more for like we were talking about, like awareness and enthusiasm, because they are a government-funded entity. That means that it's our tax dollars going there. So there's a relevance to appeal to us, in the immediate. But that's why I like this comment from Johnny Spacer.
Yeah, I was about to do that.
They say promoting NASA is up to us, and that's very true on multiple levels. I mean, it's one of the reasons that we exist as a show, is to bring the awesome wonders of space to the public, because like you said, I mean, whether it's a budgetary issue or a red tape issue, NASA isn't exactly able to go out there and tell all the amazing stories it has.
Have you? There was this thing, A Penny for NASA. Have you seen this website?
A penny for NASA?
Yeah.
No, actually.
Yeah, we should. They're trying to boost NASA up to a penny, which is 1% of the tax dollar. NASA gets half of 1% right now. And I did want to mention during the show about Elon and his Tesla car that's in space. NASA has 3 cars that are still on the moon that they put there in the very early 70s. And I don't want us to forget that.
Turning it into a parking lot. I
3
see.
fantastic
Someone
rovers.
should make a website, carsinspace.com.
Yeah.
Cars in space is currently 4.
Cars in space.
Did you
Yeah.
count the rovers? No, they're not, because they won't.
They're not.
No.
technically.
Until a Mars astronaut doesn't
Although it would be kind
Yeah,
of
that's
funny
true,
to
that's
take
true.
all of the rovers that are currently on missions right now, and then make a giant a used car commercial out of it, especially the ones
I
that aren't
like
in
that.
use anymore.
Yeah.
Superpod.
So
Make it happen.
these cars that are on the moon, then, do you think that do you think that we'll actually be going to the moon soon, or do you think that Mars is going to be first?
Well, in my movie screenplay, there's one. I had gotten a brochure for the Apollo 17 launch, and it was the last of the Apollo missions and the first to launch at night. And I snuck downstairs to watch it and turned it on, and my dad came out and was very cool about it and says, "Oh, all right," because he knew how I was at that point.
Yeah.
And we're in the dark watching this last launch, and I asked him, "Dad, we'll be going back to the moon soon, won't we?" And, "I'm sure we will, son." And that was, a long time ago.
Yeah.
Closing in on 50 years? Yeah. So, not to date myself, but
Yeah. So now, do you think that we are then eventually going to go soon?
I hope so. I
So do you
mean,
think
we
that-
should have, long time ago. We
should
could have
have.
been on
We should
Mars
have.
by now.
Yeah.
And one of the interesting things is when I worked with the Lunar Mars office and it was Planet Surface Systems, we were talking about, I asked the question, what are we going to do about the Apollo 11 landing site? Because there's 2 kinds of bases that you have. You have an expeditionary mission, which is like what Apollo was, where you go and do science and you come back. And then there's evolutionary missions where you go and you bring something with you. And you were talking about robots setting things up. You don't even need robots. You really just bring, send the stuff unmanned and let them do their things, so it's sort of robotic. And then the humans come. And then the next group brings something else, another part of the hab, and then you assemble the space. That's an evolutionary mission. And we were going to do that fairly close to where Surveyor landed and the Apollo 11 landing site. And I said, well, you don't want to really disturb. Do we want to disturb those footprints? I don't think so. I think we should velvet rope that off, And it will be kind of like an international monument.
Museum, yeah. Interplanetary monuments.
That's right. That's right.
I think that's a really great idea. And then as far as what's on there, you said that there's cars on there. So what do you think we should be doing with those when we actually go back to the lunar surface?
Oh, I don't know.
Because they might be.
One should probably come back.
Give them a car.
Oh, really? Come back?
Yeah.
Put it in a BFR and ship it back.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
To tour on the Earth, and
yeah.
I don't know. Those are interesting questions that I hope we get to get faced with sooner
that we have
rather than
the
later.
privilege to answer.
Yeah.
So actually, good point. Paul Warlow on YouTube brought up, did Chuck get asked the 4 questions?
I think we were running a bit long on time, so we skipped them, but let's ask him now.
I think so, yeah.
So, Chuck, we have 4 questions that we like to wrap up every interview with.
Okay.
So whatever comes to mind, they're really simple. So the first one, I believe, is what is your favorite space mission of all time? It can be in the past, the present, or the future.
I would say, I think I was enamored by the Apollo-Soyuz test project. I had the brochure, sent
Mike
to me
is like,
beforehand,
yeah.
and it was while the Cold War was still going on, and we were doing it in peace, and that was so meaningful to me. So I would pick that as the human spaceflight mission, and the unmanned mission, I would say Viking 1. I thought that was a cool lander.
Yeah, absolutely.
That leads very well into the next question, which is human or robot exploration of the cosmos?
Both, of course. JPL is wonderful with the unmanned missions, and can't wait to see what's inside Europa. So that's a logical sequence, like you were saying with robots. The robots go out first, and then NASA goes out, and then commercial, and then private citizens and so forth. So both are logical and part of the whole.
Very cool. And I guess that goes into, we spoke a little bit earlier, but the moon or Mars? Which one do you think should be first?
The moon has to be first.
The moon has to be first?
Yes.
Why?
Because it's 3 days away instead of 6 months away, and you practice close, and it's laid out like a lesson plan. So, of course, moon first.
I love it. Love it. And then the last one is why space?
Mankind, humans, just need to explore. We need to answer the big questions. We need to ask the big questions. And there's so many reasons. Mission to planet Earth at NASA, like looking back at the Earth and learning about other ecosystems, hopefully someday, is we're going to learn about ourselves, and it inspires, and it's the reason for being almost,
Mm-hmm. That's so good. That's so good. Well, that was a great answer. I'm sure a lot of us 100% agree with you on that one. But yeah, well, thank you for everything. It's just been so insightful having you on.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah,
It was a pleasure.
And keep us updated with how your movie's going, and
and hear all about the film.
And it's coming. There's an article about the resolution coming out. I don't know if I mentioned this in Flight Training Magazine, part of the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association's. I think it's monthly magazine.
Wow,
so that'll be really interesting. They shot me in front of Endeavor, so it was kind of full circle almost for me and Endeavor.
Nice. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, start Endeavor.
Before and after. There you
Not really
go.
ending on Endeavor, but continuing with Endeavor.
Right.
That's amazing. Wow. Well, congrats on that. I'll look that up later.
And the resolution, I didn't mention this,
Yeah.
was the runner-up name after Endeavor. It's Cook's second ship of exploration in the South Pacific. And it couldn't be a better name.
I was going to ask about that, actually.
Yeah, same. Yeah. Wow.
Cool.
That's really awesome. That's so cool. Awesome.
And it'll be interesting to see what spacecraft gets the name next. Like, will it be Orion or will it be a Dragon?
Mm-hmm.
What will it be?
Exactly.
And I'm Scorpio, not that I believe in that, but I'm a Scorpio sign, but I'm also the Chinese dragon. So I like the dragon.
cool.
So you're a dragon capsule person.
There you go.
Very cool. Very cool. Wow. Awesome. Well, thank you again so much.
Thank you.
I don't know about you guys. I'm hungry, so I think we should
definitely-
probably wrap at this point. Mike, did you have anything left to add?
No, I don't think so. Thank you very much for joining us and sharing your experiences with us. This has been very interesting.
Cool. All right, Mike, I think we need you to stick around so we can wrap up and talk about Launch Minute and stuff. But we're going to say goodbye to you guys. And don't forget, next week is a science episode as well. So tune in, Science at 1800 and Space at 2030 UTC.
Yep.
I think I reversed
Other way
those two.
around.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Any numbers.
I need food. All right. Thank you so
know
much,
what it
guys.
is.
See you next week.